We all love modern historical dramas set in the 19th century. On screen, we see nothing but beautiful balls, sparkling diamonds, gallant gentlemen, and carefree, romantic strolls through manicured English parks. But are you ready to learn the shocking, and at times downright terrifying truth about what was really hidden behind the glamour of those luxurious, multi-layered dresses? Forget the movie romance. The harsh reality of the Victorian era imposed an incredibly strict, literally suffocating system of social restrictions on women. The life of a noble lady, whom many envied so much, was in practice a constant trek through a minefield. Her every day consisted of endless, exhausting adherence to hundreds of unspoken rituals. It was a veritable gilded cage, where the slightest, even accidental breach of strict etiquette, a glove removed at the wrong moment, or a lingering glance at a gentleman, led to instant social suicide and complete expulsion from high society with no right to an apology. Be sure to watch this video all the way to the very last second, because today we're going to rip the tight corsets off Victorian myths. You'll learn how the strictest prohibitions, total control over every breath, and the brutal suppression of any personal desires became the true price for the right to simply be considered a full-fledged part of high society. And in the second half of the video, I'll tell you about one utterly absurd rule of social visits, the slightest violation of which could ruin the reputations of entire families forever. Hit that like button now, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and let's dive into the cruel and cold world of the English aristocracy. What if I told you that everything you believed about balls is a lie? 19th century dance parties weren't places for entertainment, but actual business venues for forging advantageous alliances. A young woman could not simply walk into the ballroom and choose a dance partner she liked. The entire process was strictly controlled by older female relatives and specially appointed ball organizers. Every movement on the dance floor followed an invisible script, from which deviation was strictly forbidden. Before the season began, each participant carefully studied a complex system of nonverbal communication. A simple fan in a lady's hands became a powerful tool for conveying secret messages to suitors. A certain tilt of this accessory could signify a willingness to be introduced or a polite but firm refusal. A sharp closing of the fan signaled a desire to end the current conversation. The young women practiced these gestures for months so that, at the right moment, they would appear as natural and graceful as possible. The ball booklet became a young woman's most important document for the entire evening. The names of all suitors for a dance were entered into this small paper accessory in strict order. To refuse a gentleman who had invited her without a valid reason was considered a gross violation of social etiquette. If a lady rejected one suitor, she was obliged to skip that dance and remain seated. This system ruled out any spontaneous displays of affection and made every evening a mathematically calculated affair. The temperature in the crowded hall quickly became unbearable due to the vast number of burning candles and dancing couples. The ventilation system in old mansions often could not cope with such a large gathering of guests. Ladies in heavy, multi-layered gowns had to demonstrate incredible composure and maintain a serene expression. The ability to hide fatigue was considered one of the main signs of a true aristocratic upbringing. Refreshing drinks were served strictly on schedule, and access to them was also governed by specific rules. The evening's musical accompaniment also adhered to the strict conventions of high society. The orchestra was positioned on a special balcony so as not to occupy valuable space on the dance floor. The dance program always began with a solemn and slow polonaise, in which everyone present participated. Faster and more energetic waltzes were scheduled for the middle of the evening, when the atmosphere became slightly less formal. The ball concluded with the traditional cotillion, which could last several hours and included complex figure changes. A lounge area for the older generation was furnished with special comfort in the adjacent drawing rooms. There were card tables for the gentlemen and plush armchairs for the elderly ladies. Young people entered these rooms only to pay their respects to their older relatives. It was there that the most important financial matters were decided and future marriages were preliminarily discussed. The ballroom remained a showcase, while the real deals were made in the quiet of the card rooms. The end of the ball was as organized as its beginning. The master of ceremonies gave a special signal, after which the music gradually faded away. The gentlemen escorted their ladies to the exit and handed them over to the care of their accompanying female relatives. Waiting for carriages on the street could take a while, so the lobbies of the mansions became the final venue for exchanging social gossip. The ability to say goodbye gracefully and leave a pleasant impression was valued no less than dancing skill. All these strict rules formed a unique framework of Victorian high society. Every action was aimed at preserving reputation and maintaining the family's status. Young women accepted these restrictions as a given, for there was simply no other path to success. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these strict ballroom rules. What do you think about this system of finding a partner? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. Are you ready for the shocking truth about the most important day in the life of a Victorian aristocrat? A debut at the royal court was a mandatory requirement for officially entering high society. Without this elaborate ceremony, a young woman simply did not exist in society and would not receive invitations to important receptions. Preparations for this event began several months in advance and required a colossal financial investment from the family. Special instructors spent hours training the future debutante in the proper court curtsy. The dress for the debutante ball was sewn according to the strictest regulations approved by the monarch himself. The outfit necessarily included a long train, which was incredibly difficult to manage. The young woman had to learn to gracefully sweep the heavy fabric aside with her foot as she moved backward, so as not to get tangled up and fall. The dress was allowed to be only white or cream, symbolizing the young lady's purity and innocence. The debutante's head was always adorned with ostrich feathers and a light, transparent veil of a specific length. On the day of the ceremony, carriages carrying the debutantes lined up in a long queue in front of the royal palace. The wait could last several hours, during which the young women were forbidden to leave the carriage. Crowds of ordinary townspeople gathered along the road to admire the luxurious gowns of the young aristocrats. This public display became the first serious test of composure and the ability to maintain one's dignity in any situation. The interior of the carriage was kept absolutely spotless so that not a single speck of dust would mar the snow-white silk of the dress. The procession through the palace corridors was also accompanied by a multitude of unspoken rules. A debutante was expected to move gracefully, neither lowering her eyes to the floor nor staring too intently at those present. The married lady accompanying her, usually a mother or close relative, walked slightly ahead, showing the way. Huge mirrors in the palace halls allowed the young women to check one last time that their appearance was impeccable before stepping out to meet the monarch. Guards in ceremonial uniforms ensured strict adherence to the order of the line and silence in the rooms. Only a woman of impeccable reputation could serve as a young woman's sponsor, introducing her to the court. If the accompanying lady had even the slightest hint of scandal in her past, the request for an introduction was immediately rejected. This rule forced aristocratic families to carefully monitor their connections and avoid any questionable acquaintances. Reputation in Victorian society had a cumulative effect and was passed down from the older generation to the younger. A single careless act by a mother could permanently close the door to high society for her daughters. The financial burden of the debut season often proved a heavy trial even for wealthy families. In addition to a debutante dress, a young woman needed an extensive wardrobe for morning calls, walks in the park, and evening receptions. Appearing in the same outfit at different major events was considered a sign of bad taste and financial difficulties. Many families saved for years or even mortgaged their ancestral estates to properly introduce their daughter into society. A debutante's successful marriage was viewed as the main investment, which was supposed to recoup all these colossal expenses. A young lady's daily schedule at the height of the season was planned down to the minute. The morning began with a leisurely stroll in a specific park, where it was customary to show off new elegant gowns. This was followed by hours of making obligatory courtesy calls, during which calling cards were left. In the afternoon, the young ladies returned home to change dresses and rest briefly before the evening's grand events. Such an intense social life required immense patience and incredible physical stamina. This entire complex mechanism operated solely for the sake of one primary goal for a Victorian woman. Society viewed a debut as a showcase of the family's achievements and a demonstration of the young woman's readiness to run her own household. How fair do you think a system was in which a person's future depended entirely on a single ceremony in a few seconds of curtsies? In the next chapter, you'll learn exactly how marriage contracts were drawn up and why they resembled business transactions. Watch the video to the end to discover the secrets hidden within the pages of these legal documents.
You must, for the sake of the family.
What I am about to reveal is banned in 12 countries, as it concerns strict financial control. Behind the romantic courtship and poetic declarations of love lay cold calculation and the involvement of seasoned lawyers. Under the law, a 19th century woman was not regarded as an independent person, but as an appendage to her family's wealth. The bride's dowry was discussed by fathers and attorneys in their offices, while the young couple exchanged glances in the parlor. Any display of romantic feelings was meaningless if the family's bank accounts did not meet mutual expectations. Before the adoption of special laws regarding the property of married women, a bride lost all rights to her money after the wedding. All her funds, real estate, and even personal jewelry automatically passed into her husband's full control. The husband could spend this money to pay off his own debts or make risky investments without his wife's consent. A woman had no right to sign financial documents, draw up a will, or open her own bank account. This complete financial dependence made the choice of a partner a matter of basic survival rather than romantic attachment. The institution of primogeniture further complicated the situation for daughters in prominent Victorian families. Under this rule, the main estate and the lion's share of the capital were inherited exclusively by the eldest son. Younger sons and daughters received only small fixed sums, which were barely enough to maintain their accustomed lifestyle. Therefore, a successful marriage became the only way for a young woman to maintain the level of comfort to which she had been accustomed since childhood. If she remained an old maid, an aristocrat was doomed to live on a modest allowance in her older brother's home. Financial negotiations could last for weeks, and the slightest disagreement between the parties led to the cancellation of the engagement. The groom was required to provide the bride's lawyers with full statements of his debts and the profitability of his estates. If hidden financial problems were discovered, the girl's father had every right to break off the engagement without damaging his daughter's reputation. Society viewed such calculations with complete understanding, considering a marriage without a solid financial foundation to be frivolous. No emotional impulse could justify a union leading to potential bankruptcy and loss of social status. Unmarried sisters found themselves in a completely different position compared to their relatives who had married well. Having received a modest share of the family fortune, they often pooled their finances to live together in small, comfortable homes. This relative financial independence allowed them to avoid control by older male relatives. Such women often devoted their lives to managing small farms, studying botany, or engaging in active social work. They actively managed their modest estates, engaged in charity work, and played an important role in local high society. A specific provision in the contract addressed the provision for future children born of this union. Lawyers stipulated in advance the amounts to be allocated for the education of sons and the dowries of daughters. This foresight ensured the family's status would be preserved even in the event of a sudden financial collapse of the head of the household. Capital was invested in reliable government bonds, yielding a small but stable and guaranteed annual income. Risky investments were strictly prohibited by the terms of the trust agreements to safeguard the future of subsequent generations. This entire complex system of financial control shaped a unique approach to marriage in the 19th century. Women learned to strike a balance between the demands of strict law and the desire to make their personal lives as comfortable as possible. Understanding these hidden mechanisms allows us to take a completely new look at the classic novels of that remarkable era. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the financial secrets of the past, please like this video. Your support helps us create even more high-quality and interesting historical content. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about is that the mistress of a large house worked just as hard as her servants. Managing a huge Victorian mansion was a complex administrative task, comparable to running a small modern business. The ladies' day began early in the morning with a meeting with the housekeeper to discuss the detailed menu for all upcoming meals. Every penny of the household budget was strictly accounted for in special ledgers, which were regularly checked by her husband. Inability to manage the household competently was considered a serious flaw, capable of ruining the reputation of even the most beautiful aristocrat. The house's storage rooms resembled actual shops, filled with expensive groceries, candles, and cleaning supplies. Only the mistress had access to the pantries containing tea, sugar, and spices, personally handing out the supplies to the cook each morning. These goods cost a fortune, so the lady always wore a bunch of keys on her belt as a symbol of her authority. The distribution of provisions was accompanied by careful weighing and the recording of precise figures in the mansion's expense ledger. Such control ruled out the possibility of theft among the numerous staff and helped plan future purchases. Managing the household staff required a woman to be diplomatic, firm, and possess an excellent understanding of human psychology. Dozens of people worked in the large house, from the highly paid French chef to the junior maids and shoe shiners. The lady of the house had to resolve conflicts among the servants and ensure their neatness and moral conduct. The dismissal of a servant who had committed a fault was always accompanied by the issuance of a letter of recommendation, upon which the servant's future depended. A fair and wise mistress commanded immense respect, and servants could work in such a household for decades. The quality of the cleaning was checked daily along a strictly approved route. A lady in white gloves might run her finger along the mantelpiece to ensure there was no dust in the living room. Particular attention was paid to the polishing of silverware, the cleanliness of crystal chandeliers, and the condition of expensive carpets. The preservation of antique furniture and works of art was also the personal responsibility of the woman managing the household. Any perceived negligence was immediately discussed with the housekeeper so that appropriate strict measures could be taken against the staff. Charity was an obligatory part of life for any self-respecting Victorian aristocrat. Women organized fundraisers for hospitals, visited orphanages, and oversaw the operation of schools for the poor. This activity was not merely a pastime, it required deep immersion in financial and organizational matters. Ladies kept accounts for charitable funds and organized large-scale fairs to attract new donations. Participation in such projects allowed women to exercise their managerial talents outside their own homes. Preparing the house for the changing seasons resembled a large-scale military operation involving the entire staff. In the spring, heavy velvet curtains were replaced with light fabrics, and the furniture was covered with special linen dust covers. Winter rugs were beaten, thoroughly cleaned, and rolled up using moth repellents. The family's move to a country estate for the summer required packing hundreds of trunks with clothing, tableware, and books. The lady of the house oversaw every stage of these endless relocations, ensuring the safety of the family's valuable heirlooms. Every day of a Victorian lady's life was governed by a strict schedule and constant oversight of her surroundings. This routine, invisible to the eye, ensured the comfort and well-being of the entire large family, upholding its high social status. How difficult do you think it was to manage such a massive operation every single day, without a day off? In the next chapter, you'll learn how an ordinary dinner turned into an incredibly complex theatrical performance with its own strict rules. Watch the video until the end to discover the secrets of Victorian table etiquette. A Victorian dinner party was a complex ceremony requiring impeccable knowledge of a multitude of rules of conduct. Invitations were sent out several weeks before the scheduled date, and a refusal without a valid reason was considered an unacceptable insult. Seating guests at the table became a veritable diplomatic puzzle for the hostess of a large household. It was necessary to take into account the social status of each guest, their title, and even possible hidden conflicts between families. The host and hostess sat at opposite ends of the long table to give equal attention to everyone present. The process of serving dishes underwent significant changes in the second half of the 19th century due to French influence. Previously, all the food was placed on the table at once, creating a sense of abundance but cooling quickly. The new system involved serving courses in strict succession, with each new dish brought out separately. This required a large staff of well-trained footmen who had to act in perfect synchrony and absolute silence. Guests could enjoy hot food, and the dinner itself turned into a long, measured gastronomic journey. The table setting was a true work of art, featuring dozens of different items. Special forks, knives, and spoons of specific shapes and sizes were designated for each course. Crystal glasses for various beverages were arranged in a neat row next to each guest's plate. In the center of the table stood elaborate floral arrangements and tall silver candelabras with numerous candles. The ability to use all these utensils correctly unmistakably identified a person of aristocratic origin. The menu for a formal dinner consisted of numerous courses, ranging from light soups to elaborate desserts. Chefs had to display remarkable ingenuity, creating veritable sculptures out of jelly or intricately shaped pâtés. Particular attention was paid to the presentation of the dishes, which were intended to captivate the guests with their elegance. Each course was accompanied by a special sauce, the recipe for which was kept a closely guarded secret by the family's head chef. The abundance of exotic fruits on the dessert table underscored the family's wealth and extensive trade connections. After about an hour, the men joined the ladies in the main drawing room to spend time together. The musical part of the evening began, during which the young ladies demonstrated their talents in piano playing or singing. This was an excellent opportunity for unmarried young women to attract the attention of potential suitors with their grace and skill. The hostess made sure that every guest was involved in the festivities and did not sit alone in boredom. The card tables were reopened for those who preferred a quiet game to musical entertainment. Attire for a formal dinner was incredibly luxurious and required meticulous preparation. Ladies wore dresses with deep necklines that exposed the shoulders, which was permitted only in the evening. An abundance of jewelry served as an indicator of the husband's financial prosperity and the antiquity of the aristocratic family's lineage. Men were required to wear formal black tailcoats with perfectly starched white shirts and ties. Any deviation from this strict dress code could result in a person simply no longer being invited. Servants remained virtually invisible during dinner, but were in complete control of the proceedings. A footman stood behind the chair of every important guest, anticipating their every wish and changing plates at the right moment. Training such staff took years, and good waiters were worth their weight in gold in wealthy households. A servant's expression had to remain absolutely impassive, no matter what was happening at the table. This created the illusion of magic, as food appeared and disappeared on its own, without interrupting the pleasant social conversation. The time for guests to depart was also governed by rules of etiquette and common sense. The most high-ranking individuals always left the mansion first, sending a kind of signal to the rest of those present. Staying too long was considered just as improper as leaving immediately after dessert was served. The host escorted each guest to the living room door, exchanging traditional pleasantries and words of thanks. The morning after the reception, visitors were expected to send a thank you card for the wonderful evening.
A pleasure, as always.
Guess what happened next to women's wardrobes during the era of rapid industrial progress? The clothing of a Victorian lady transformed from a simple means of protection against the cold into a highly sophisticated tool of social classification. Every dress, hat, or pair of gloves conveyed precise information to those around her about the family's status and income. An incorrectly chosen fabric shade could instantly betray a provincial background, even for the wealthiest heiress. Fashion trends changed at an incredible pace, forcing women to constantly update their vast wardrobes. The crinoline became the defining symbol of the era, transforming not only the silhouette, but also the very space around a woman. Huge structures made of steel hoops allowed for the creation of skirts of incredible volume without heavy layers of fabric underneath. This fashion trend required a significant widening of doorways and a rearrangement of furniture in aristocratic mansions. Wearing a crinoline taught women to move with a special, flowing gait so that the structure would not sway too much. Men had to keep a respectful distance, which physically emphasized the lady's inaccessibility to outsiders. The tournure replaced the crinoline, shifting the emphasis and volume of the dress to the back of the silhouette. This complex overlay created the illusion of voluptuous curves and required a vast amount of drapery and bows. Women had to learn new ways to sit in a chair, positioning themselves sideways to avoid creasing the expensive structure. The multi-layered skirts were adorned with heavy fringe, lace, and velvet ribbons, emphasizing the richness of the trim. The outfit became increasingly architectural and heavy, restricting natural movement to a minimum. Walking dresses were designed with the need to navigate dusty London streets or parks in mind. The skirts of such outfits were sewn slightly shorter than usual so that the hem would not get dirty on the grimy sidewalks. A special system of laces was often used, allowing the hem of the dress to be discreetly lifted when crossing a puddle. Fabrics for walking outfits were chosen to be denser and more wear-resistant, such as high-quality wool or heavy silk. Hats that sat firmly on the head and small, elegant parasols were essential accessories. Creating a single evening gown required the immense labor of an entire army of experienced seamstresses and embroiderers. The finest lace was woven by hand for months, and seed beads and pearls were sewn onto the fabric according to the most intricate designs. The fitting process could take many hours, as the dress had to fit the figure absolutely flawlessly. Fashion magazines imported from Paris served as the main guide for London seamstresses when creating new styles. Competition among noblewomen at balls spurred dressmakers to create true masterpieces of the art of dressmaking. 19th century fashion was not merely the art of adornment, but a strict set of rules for social integration. The choice of a dress was dictated not by personal comfort, but by the need to constantly reaffirm one's place in the social hierarchy. Do you think it was psychologically difficult to be constantly under such strict visual scrutiny from society? In the next chapter, you'll learn exactly what young women were taught as part of their home education. Watch the video to the end to understand which talents were valued most highly on the marriage market.
Looking right this way.
The education of a Victorian lady differed radically from the academic training of men of that time. Girls were not sent to prestigious universities to study the exact sciences, philosophy, or complex jurisprudence. Instead, they received a home education under the guidance of strict governesses and specially invited tutors. The main goal of this education was to create the ideal companion for a future noble and wealthy husband. The set of essential skills required for a successful marriage was called the system of social talents or accomplishments. The visual arts were also part of the standard curriculum for training the ideal Victorian wife. Young women were taught watercolor painting, which was considered the most suitable and elegant medium for a woman's hand. They painted landscapes during country walks and created detailed albums with sketches of botanical specimens. Oil paints were used less frequently, as working with them was associated with a professional craft rather than a social pastime. The ability to quickly make a pencil sketch was valued as a way to capture beautiful moments while traveling. Needlework remained an important pastime even for the wealthiest women, highlighting their traditional virtues. Embroidery with silk and beads allowed them to create true works of art to decorate the interiors of their mansions. Ladies spent long hours at their embroidery hoops, chatting with one another, or listening to readings of classical literature. Skillful needlework demonstrated obedience, patience, and the ability to focus on minute details. The results of this painstaking labor were often given as gifts to close relatives or sold at charity bazaars. Reading was strictly monitored by mothers and governesses to protect a young woman's impressionable mind. Preference was given to historical works, religious treatises, and classical poetry that fostered high moral character. Novels were often banned, as it was believed they fostered unrealistic expectations of real life. Reading aloud was practiced within the family as a wholesome evening pastime that developed proper diction and public speaking skills. Discussing the books they had read allowed a woman to demonstrate her education without overstepping the bounds of etiquette. Knowledge of art history and architecture helped a lady hold conversations with educated gentlemen. Young women studied classical ancient forms, the history of the Renaissance, and the characteristics of European architectural styles. This knowledge was essential during the traditional extended journeys through Europe, the so-called grand tours. The ability to competently evaluate a painting or sculpture in a museum underscored one's membership in the elite circle of connoisseurs of beauty. Such an education cultivated the refined taste necessary for subsequently establishing one's own family home. The basics of bookkeeping and financial management were not taught to everyone, but were considered an extremely useful skill. A future housewife had to be able to check bills from suppliers and monitor expenses for maintaining domestic staff. Mathematical knowledge was limited to basic arithmetic necessary for practical use in daily life. The ability to manage her husband's budget was valued just as highly as the ability to organize a lavish reception for important guests. These practical skills were passed down from mother to daughter and honed through practice after marriage. The system of social achievements created the image of a well-rounded but completely submissive woman. All these talents served merely as an adornment for the man and a way to highlight his high social status. Education did not lead to a profession, but ensured the flawless fulfillment of the role of the ideal life partner in Victorian society. Knowledge was used as a tool for social adaptation, not as a means of personal fulfillment or independence. It was precisely these standards that shaped the unique cultural landscape of the 19th century, where beauty and submissiveness were valued above all else. The architecture of the Victorian mansion served as a physical reflection of the strict social hierarchy of the time. The interior of the house was clearly divided into formal rooms for guests, private family quarters, and a hidden area for servants. The grand entrance doors and wide staircases were reserved exclusively for the masters of the house and their distinguished guests. Servants moved through dark, narrow corridors and hidden staircases to avoid being seen by their employers. This layout created the illusion of perfect order, concealing the complex machinery of daily life from prying eyes. The men's and women's spaces in the house also had clear boundaries and distinct functional purposes. The library and billiard room were considered exclusively male territory, where gentlemen could smoke cigars and discuss politics. The interiors of these rooms were decorated in dark tones, featuring heavy mahogany paneling and leather furniture. Women were strictly forbidden by etiquette from entering these rooms without a specific invitation from the host. This territorial segregation underscored the division of spheres of influence into serious business matters and light social pursuits. In aristocratic homes, the spouses' bedrooms were always located in separate, often adjoining rooms. This ensured personal space and the ability to rest according to each spouse's individual schedule. The lady's bedroom was connected to a spacious boudoir, where she prepared for social engagements with the help of her maids. The men's quarters included an austere dressing room and often had a separate entrance to a study or library. This separation of private quarters was considered the norm in high society, ensuring comfort and adherence to strict rules of propriety. The home library was a sacred space filled with rare editions in heavy leather bindings. Access to this room was often restricted to protect the valuable volumes from accidental damage or sunlight. Huge floor-to-ceiling bookcases required the use of special portable ladders to find the desired book. The master of the house spent long hours here studying works on economics, history, and ancient philosophy. The air in the room was always permeated with the scent of old paper, expensive wood wax, and tobacco smoke. Special attention was paid during construction to the bell system for summoning the staff. In every room of the house, there was a special cord or button connected to a panel of bells in the servants' hallway. Each bell had its own unique tone so that the servants could instantly tell which room the signal came from. This system allowed the lady of the house to give orders without raising her voice or leaving her cozy armchair in the boudoir. The mechanization of daily life gradually changed the rhythm of life in the mansion, making the servants' work more organized and efficient. Greenhouses and winter gardens became an integral part of the opulent Victorian home in the 19th century. These glass-enclosed extensions allowed for the cultivation of exotic plants and the year-round enjoyment of blooming palms and orchids. The winter garden served as the perfect setting for romantic strolls during balls and quiet conversations over a cup of tea. Architects competed to create intricate metal structures supporting enormous glass domes. These green oases demonstrated humanity's power over nature and a willingness to spend vast sums to maintain beauty. Thus, every square meter of a Victorian mansion served a specific social function. The house became a complex theatrical stage where every family member and servant knew their place and their role. Architecture reinforced gender roles and social inequality, making them visible and physically tangible within the space. Understanding the layout of these historic mansions helps us better grasp the psychology of the people who lived within these luxurious yet austere walls. Every detail of the interior served the common purpose of preserving reputation and demonstrating the unshakable grandeur of the British aristocracy. The tradition of afternoon tea became one of the most important social rituals of the Victorian era. This custom arose as a practical solution to the long gap between a light breakfast and a late dinner party. Over time, a simple snack evolved into a complex ceremony around which a lady's daily social life revolved. An invitation to tea was considered a sign of special trust and a way to strengthen friendly ties between noble families. An entire industry of exquisite tableware, special furniture, and home linens developed around this ritual. Tea was served at a strictly defined time, usually around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Serving required the use of the finest thin-walled porcelain, silver teapots, and elegant sugar tongs. The choice of tea variety remained the prerogative of the hostess, who personally blended the leaves from special, expensive wooden boxes. The fragrant beverage was poured only by the lady herself, which underscored her status as the guardian of the hearth and home. Servants merely brought in heavy trays with boiling water and snacks, after which they quietly left the room. Conversation over a cup of tea was more intimate and relaxed compared to formal dinners. It was in this setting that the latest social news was shared, engagements were discussed, and plans were made for future receptions. The hostess skillfully steered the conversation, preventing it from veering into outright gossip or overly serious debates. The art of maintaining light conversation was considered an essential talent, one that young women were taught from early adolescence. The ability to break an awkward silence with an appropriate joke made a lady a welcome guest in any aristocratic home. There was a strict distinction between informal tea gatherings at home and formal tea parties for large numbers of guests. At large events, guests could move about the drawing room, mingling in various groups, while footmen served tea. In such cases, musical accompaniment became an essential backdrop for creating a festive atmosphere in the home. Young women could show off their new dresses and make useful acquaintances under the watchful eye of their older female relatives. It was an excellent venue for young people's social activities during the daytime. special furniture was designed exclusively for the convenience of tea ceremonies. Low tables on wheels made it easy to move trays with hot drinks and tableware closer to the guests. Elegant, lightweight chairs were arranged in small groups to encourage private conversations among several guests. The entire living room setting was transformed for this ritual, creating the most comfortable environment for peaceful relaxation. Furniture makers competed to create intricate mechanisms that concealed additional shelves for sweets. During the Victorian era, sugar was sold in the form of large, solid lumps that had to be broken open with special tools. Snow White refined sugar was expensive and symbolized status, so it was generously offered to all guests. Special silver tongs allowed one to carefully place a piece into a cup without soiling one's gloves or violating etiquette. Lemon and milk were also served in elegant silver pitchers, whose design often matched that of the teapot. Every detail of the service was carefully thought out, turning tea time into a true aesthetic delight for the eyes. The afternoon tea ritual perfectly reflected Victorian society's desire for order, beauty, and control over time. This midday break gave women an opportunity to take a respite from the hustle and bustle and strengthen important social ties. The simple acts of brewing and pouring the beverage took on a sacred meaning of preserving unshakable traditions. The tea ceremony became a symbol of British comfort, carefully preserved behind the facades of austere aristocratic mansions. It united generations, passing on the subtlest nuances of etiquette from experienced matrons to young debutantes.
They are delightful, darling.
A Victorian woman's movements outside her home were strictly regulated by rules of safety and social etiquette. Solo walks through the city streets were strictly forbidden for ladies of high society so as not to compromise their reputation.
Let us hurry along.
A young woman was always required to be accompanied by a chaperone, a married relative, or at least a loyal maid. This rule protected aristocratic women from unwanted attention and underscored their high social status and inviolability. The use of a private carriage was considered the only acceptable means of travel through the crowded and dirty streets of London. A family's own carriage served as much of a showcase of the family's wealth as the mansion's grand dining room. Luxurious carriages were adorned with family crests on the doors and lined inside with expensive velvet or soft leather. The wheels and body were coated with several layers of special varnish that glistened in the sun like a mirror. The coachman and footmen wore special livery in the family colors, which made it possible to recognize the noble family's carriage from a distance. Managing such a fleet of vehicles required enormous financial expenditures to maintain the equipment and support staff. The rules for staying in hotels while traveling were also subject to the strict laws of Victorian morality. A respectable lady never went down to the common dining room, preferring to have her meals served in her private quarters. Walks through an unfamiliar city were taken only during the day and exclusively in the company of male relatives. Meeting new acquaintances while traveling was considered acceptable, but required a formal introduction through mutual friends. A woman's reputation was fragile, and any deviation from the norms of behavior while away from home could lead to a scandal. The use of hired carriages or omnibuses was considered unacceptable for aristocratic women due to the mixing of different social classes. Touching commoners or engaging in casual conversation with a stranger on public transport was regarded as a gross violation of social boundaries. If a private carriage was unavailable, a woman would rather cancel a visit than use public transportation. This isolation created an impenetrable barrier around high society, shielding them from the harsh realities of urban life among the poor. Transportation independence was a key marker of belonging to the elite circle of the chosen few. Ocean travel became popular thanks to the development of comfortable transatlantic steamship lines. First-class cabins resembled luxurious hotel rooms with exquisite furnishings and private bathrooms. On board the ship, the same strict rules for dressing for dinner were observed as in London mansions. The captain's dinners turned into veritable social gatherings with dancing and live music in the middle of the vast ocean. Despite the risk of seasickness, The ladies strove to maintain an impeccable appearance throughout the entire voyage. The bicycle, which appeared at the end of the century, became a true symbol of the nascent women's emancipation and freedom. This invention allowed women to get around independently, without the constant supervision of coachmen and intrusive chaperones. To ride a bicycle, fashion had to change, leading to the creation of special split skirts that shocked conservative society. Conservatives considered this activity indecent, but the popularity of the new mode of transportation grew at an incredible pace. The bicycle gave women physical freedom, which gradually began to transform their social status as well. The transportation revolution of the 19th century significantly expanded the physical boundaries of the Victorian woman's world. The speed and comfort of travel altered the familiar way of life, bringing new trends into the closed circles of the aristocracy. However, social barriers crumbled much more slowly than the distances between European capitals were shrinking. The era of technological progress gradually paved the way for the sweeping social changes of the following century. Strict rules of etiquette remained the last bastion of a fading world, striving to preserve its exclusivity. The life of a Victorian woman, hidden behind the luxurious facades of palaces, was a constant struggle to maintain her status within the strictest of rules. Enormous wealth and beautiful gowns came at a price, expressed in complete submission to social norms and a lack of freedom of choice. This era has left us a legacy of incredibly beautiful architecture, refined etiquette, and a history of remarkable human resilience. Please write in the comments what other topics or historical eras you would like to see in our future videos. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new fascinating investigations into the hidden secrets of the past.